I went on a work trip for a month and came home to find my apartment being used to film adult movies. On my couch. I went on a work trip for a month and came home to find my apartment being used to film adult movies. On my couch. It all started with the smell. I slid the key into the lock, turned the handle, and instantly knew something was off. The air hit me like a hot cloud of cheap perfume, sweat, and something else I couldn't immediately place. My apartment didn't smell like home. It smelled like the back room of a nightclub that got shut down in 2008. It was 11 a.m. I had just flown back from a month-long business trip in Denver. I'd given my roommate, let's call him Ricky, plenty of notice. A full week in advance, I texted him, landing Thursday morning. Can't wait to be back. He replied, awesome. Can't wait to see you. Place is waiting. Technically, he wasn't wrong. The place was waiting. Just not for me. I took about 3 steps inside and immediately spotted the tripods. One was set up directly in front of the couch. There was a ring light on the floor, a bottle of baby oil on the coffee table, and, I swear, a pair of lacy red underwear hanging off the lamp. On the dining table, a softbox lighting kit. On a chair nearby, a bunny mask. And I hadn't even made it to the bedrooms yet. I called out, Ricky. Silence. I crept toward the hallway. My room was locked, thankfully. Ricky's? Wide open. And that's when I saw them. 3 people. 1 woman, wearing nothing but lingerie and knee-high socks, sat on the edge of Ricky's bed scrolling through her phone. A guy, pantsless, stood by the mirror doing something I will not describe. Another girl, half-dressed, was fiddling with the camera tripod. They all turned to look at me like I'd walked into the wrong level of a video game. I'm standing there in my company-branded t-shirt, dragging my suitcase behind me like a total idiot. The woman closest to me smiles and says, oh, you must be the new guy. We thought you weren't coming till tonight. I couldn't even form a full sentence. My brain just screamed. What the actual hell is going on? Then Ricky walked out of the bathroom, wearing nothing but a robe, holding a wine glass, at 11 in the freaking morning. Brew. Surprise. Look, I meant to tell you we're kinda using the space as a creative venue, just during the day, only when you're gone. Turns out, Ricky had been renting out the apartment as an adult film studio through some sketchy side site. He got paid in cash. He claimed it was all super chill and legit professional. And according to him, it was fine because, and I quote, you weren't using it anyway, except now I was. And I had absolutely no idea what had gone down on my couch. I dropped my suitcase right there in the hallway. Not because I meant to make a dramatic exit, but because my hands were actually shaking. I took one look at Ricky and said, you're joking, right? He sipped his wine like we were on a rooftop brunch. Nah man, it's been working out great. They love the lighting in here. Natural window light, exposed brick, real artsy stuff. I glanced over at the guy still not wearing pants, now casually doing stretches like this was just a yoga class. The other girl was now lighting a candle. Candle. On my dresser. My blood pressure was trying to break the sound barrier. I said, you didn't even ask. You didn't even mention this. What the hell is wrong with you? He raised his hands like I was overreacting. It's temporary. We only shot like 10 scenes total. I kept your door locked. Chill. 10 scenes. I couldn't process that. This man had turned our 2-bedroom apartment into a low-budget Pornhub original set while I was answering emails across the country. I stormed into the living room, stepped over a feather boa and what looked like a used wipe, and grabbed my phone. I'm calling the landlord. That's when Ricky actually panicked. Whoa, come on. Let's not nuke the whole thing. I'll cut you in. 30%. 40 even. You didn't lose anything. Oh, I didn't lose anything? My couch is now a biohazard. My bath towels were in one of the camera shots. I recognized the navy one. I got it for college. My personal space had literally been invaded by a full-on amateur film crew. Also, fun detail, my Wi-Fi password had been changed. That's when I realized Ricky had set up a separate guest network. The SSID? Pillow Talk Studios, 5G. I kid you not. So I call the landlord anyway. He doesn't pick up, but I leave a voicemail that basically goes, "Hi, it's Jake in Unit 2B. I just got back from a trip and found out my roommate's been using the apartment for illegal adult film production. Please call me back. Also, I think I stepped in lube." 15 minutes later, everyone was packing up. Lingerie girl handed me an edible arrangement and said, "Sorry for the mess. Love the couch though, it's got bounce." I said nothing. I was dead inside. Ricky tried to give me $200 as a peace offering. I Venmo requested him $5,000 for trauma. So after they all left, after the edible arrangement, after the guy in mesh shorts asked if he could film just one more quick solo, absolutely not. I was left alone in my apartment, standing in the middle of the living room like a man who just discovered his house was built on an ancient burial ground. I didn't sit down. Not on the couch. Not on any surface that had been within 10 feet of Ricky's little creative project. Instead, I opened every window, sprayed half a bottle of Lysol, then sat cross-legged on the kitchen counter like a traumatized raccoon. The landlord finally called me back. He was silent for the first 15 seconds after I explained the situation. Then he just said, "What the F *** K?" And I knew he got it. He told me this was a massive lease violation, promised to take care of it, and, my favorite part, asked me to email him any footage I had. I said, "You think I filmed this?" He said, "You said they filmed it. Maybe it's online?" That's when it hit me. What if my apartment is already on the internet? What if my couch is famous now and not in a good way? So I did what no human should ever have to do. I searched my own couch on the internet. Thanks to the SSID Pillow Talk Studios 5G and a little too much curiosity, I found it. There were clips, multiple, and in one of them, horrifyingly, I recognized my cat walking through the background like an unbothered extra. The comments were even worse. "Love the authentic setting. Feels real. That gray couch again classic. Wait, is that a cat?" I sent the link to the landlord. He didn't respond. I assume he either fainted or threw his phone into the ocean. As for Ricky, he tried to gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. Said things like, "Dude, it's not like I filmed you. This is modern entrepreneurship. I sanitized everything." He had not. I told him he had 24 hours to get out or I'd press charges and hand over all the footage to both the landlord and the leasing office. He didn't even argue, just packed up and left like it was inconvenient. Not insane. And get this, he left me a parting gift. Just sitting in the middle of the living room, on the couch, with a post-it note that said, "Thanks for being chill. Cleanup is on me, winky face." I got the couch steam cleaned. Twice. Still can't look at it without hearing moaning flashbacks. My cat now sleeps exclusively in the sink. And as for me, I now read Craigslist listings very carefully before taking a roommate. Because once your living room has become a category on a niche website, there's really no going back. Never again. My roommate secretly moved her boyfriend into our apartment and hid him under the bed when guests came over. For 3 months. You ever get that feeling someone's lying to you, but the lie is so dumb, so insane, that your brain refuses to process it? Yeah. That was me with Katie. Katie was my roommate for about 6 months. We met through a mutual friend, and she seemed normal enough at first. Worked remote in graphic design. Liked reality TV. Obsessed with lemon-scented everything. Bit intense, but chill. About 2 months in, weird things started happening. First, the shower was always wet when I got home. Not steamy, not freshly used, just recently occupied. Even when Katie claimed she hadn't left her desk all day. Second, our fridge started emptying faster than usual. I'd buy a 6-pack of yogurt, gone in 2 days. Sandwich meat, vanished. I even started keeping count. I was down to marking eggs with a Sharpie. I asked Katie about it and she said, totally deadpan, "Oh, I've just been really hungry lately. Hormones or something." Okay, sure. But then I found a sock. Not her sock, a giant men's Nike ankle sock. On the bathroom floor. So I straight up asked, "Hey, is someone staying over?" She said, "Oh no, that's my brother's. He visited last weekend." I had been home all weekend. It got weirder. I started hearing noises at night. Whispering. The unmistakable creak of someone tiptoeing through the apartment. One time, I even saw the bathroom light flick on at 2 a.m. and then go off again 5 seconds later. I texted Katie about it. She replied, "Huh. Maybe the apartment's haunted lol." That was her actual response. So I did what any normal, suspicious person would do. I pretended to leave town. I packed a weekend bag, made a show of dragging it down the hallway, slammed the door, and waited on the fire escape outside my window with snacks and a full battery. Not even 20 minutes later, I kid you not, a grown-ass man crawled out from under her bed, like some kind of haunted raccoon prince. He was tall, scruffy, wearing boxers and a t-shirt, and just casually walked into the kitchen like this was his place. He opened my oat milk, drank from the carton, and sat down on my couch like he owned it. I filmed the whole thing. Then I walked back inside. You should have seen his face, like a deer that had been caught streaming Netflix in someone else's living room. I said, "Hi, you must be hormones." He jumped up so fast he knocked over the oat milk. It spilled all over the rug I paid for. Katie came sprinting out of her room barefoot, yelling, Wait, it's not what it looks like." "Oh really?" I said, holding up my phone. "Because it looks like your secret boyfriend just emerged from under your bed like a cryptid and drank my milk." She froze, like mid-yell. Then her eyes darted to the guy, who, by the way, was trying to quietly tiptoe back toward her room like he could somehow unexist if he moved slowly enough. "This is Darren," she said finally, her voice tiny. He's been staying with me." "For how long?" "A while." I turned to Darren. "How long?" He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Since May. It was August. That man had been living in my apartment, eating my food, using my shampoo, stealing my Netflix, and hiding every time someone came over." He admitted, full-on confessed, that he'd been crawling under her bed whenever guests came by, because Katie didn't want roommate drama. I asked why she didn't just tell me. You know what she said? "You seemed kinda territorial about the living room, so I figured this was easier than saying, 'Hey, my boyfriend is staying here.' It gets better. Worse. He didn't pay rent, didn't split utilities, had a duffel bag stashed inside her closet with his clothes. He had a toothbrush in the bathroom, which he'd apparently been hiding behind the mirror every morning, like a criminal or a very hygienic raccoon. Oh, and the best part? I found a tiny AirTag taped to the underside of the couch. I confronted them, and Katie goes, "Oh, that's just so Darren knows if anyone's sitting on the couch before he comes out. Like he's a feral animal sensing vibrations." I was done. I told them both to get out that night. Katie begged, cried, said she couldn't afford to move, that Darren didn't have a stable home. You know what's wild? He said, "Technically, I've lived here 30 days, so I might have tenant rights." "Tenant rights, sir? You live under a bed. You are not a tenant. You are a dust goblin with opinions." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, I was furious. Like vibrating with anger, furious. There was a full-grown man who had been squatting in my apartment for months, using my Wi-Fi, eating my groceries, hiding like Gollum every time I had company. And now he had the audacity to talk about tenant rights? I spent the whole night Googling tenant laws in our state. And yeah, technically, if someone lives somewhere for over 30 days, even unofficially, they can claim a type of tenant status. It's called a holdover occupant. I wanted to scream. Instead, I made a plan. Step 1. I changed the Wi-Fi password. New network name, Darren Can't live here. Step 2. I created a move-out countdown poster on the fridge. Huge bold letters. You have 72 hours to vacate this premises. Love, the actual person who pays rent. Step 3. I called the landlord. To my surprise, he was way cooler than I expected. Once I explained the situation with light censorship, he said, "Wait, he lived there? Like under the bed?" Me? Yes. Him? That's not even illegal. That's just creepy. Turns out the lease had a specific clause about unauthorized occupants staying longer than 10 days. Boom. That meant Katie was in direct violation, and the landlord gave me written permission to begin the eviction process immediately if Darren didn't leave. So the next morning, I handed Darren a printed notice. He was on the couch eating MY cereal, with MY spoon, in MY robe. I slapped the paper on the table and said, "You have 3 days, or I'm calling the cops and the health department. I'm sure they'd love to know how long you've been living in my apartment without a lease." He mumbled something about oppression and late-stage capitalism, and then asked if I had any oat milk. Spoiler, I did not. Katie cried again, said I was ruining her relationship. I told her she was ruining my sanity. She finally agreed to leave with Darren if I gave them until Sunday. I agreed under one condition, that Darren slept in his own visible human shape, on top of the bed, in full view until then. No more cryptid lurking. No more disappearing ex. I said, if I catch him under furniture one more time, I'm calling animal control. Sunday came. They packed up in the most dramatic way possible. Tears, hugs, a tiny Bluetooth speaker playing breakup songs. Darren tried to fist bump me on the way out. I closed the door. Then I opened every window in the apartment and saged the place like it had survived an exorcism. The kicker? A week later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. From Darren. It said, "No hard feelings. If you ever need help filming anything creative, I have equipment. And lighting. Yours in peace and passion. D." I framed it. Hung it in the bathroom. Because honestly, that story paid my rent in YouTube views 3 times over. My roommate got a fake job just to keep pretending he was busy. I always admired how productive my roommate Zach seemed. He'd leave the apartment every morning at 8:15 a.m. Sharp, briefcase in hand, AirPods in, wearing a button-up and slacks. He said he worked at a fintech startup downtown, something with blockchain-adjacent machine learning, which meant absolutely nothing to me but sounded important. Every evening around 6, he'd come back exhausted, toss his keys dramatically on the counter, and groan. Another 10-hour grind, man. He always had stories. Today my manager had a meltdown and rage quit on Slack. Or, we onboarded a client who paid in crypto and then tried to invoice us in Dogecoin. I believed every word. Then he got laid off. Or so he said. He moped around for 2 days. Said they downsized the dev team after some weird liquidity thing with their burn rate. Again, I had no idea what that meant, but he sounded devastated. I told him to take his time, focus on himself, and offered to cover an extra $200 of rent until he got back on his feet. He thanked me, teared up a little and said, "You're a real one, bro." That was on a Thursday. The following Monday at exactly 8:15 a.m. I heard the front door shut. Confused, I looked outside. Zach was walking to the bus stop, briefcase in hand, same outfit as usual. I assumed maybe he had a job interview. But then it happened again the next day. And the next. After a week of this, I asked, "Yo, did you get hired somewhere already?" He paused. No, just going to a co-working space to stay in the rhythm, you know? Fair. Kind of weird, but okay. Then one day, I left work early after a canceled meeting. As I turned the corner toward our apartment, I saw Zach, sitting at the outdoor table of a McDonald's, wearing his work clothes, laptop open, watching Parks and Recreation, eating a McFlurry. He didn't notice me. He was laughing so hard he almost spit out ice cream. I walked up. "So, busy day at the co-working space?" He jumped, panicked, slammed the laptop shut and said, "Oh, hey. Yeah. Just taking a quick lunch break, man. Startup grind, you know how it is." There was no startup. There was no co-working space. My man had been fake commuting and role-playing as a tech bro just so he wouldn't have to admit he was doing absolutely nothing. After catching Zach on his corporate break at McDonald's, I thought he'd drop the act. Instead, he doubled down. That night, he came home and announced that his old team had offered him a freelance contract. "Back-end consulting, no biggie," he said, taking a dramatic sip from a wine glass like he was a burned-out VP at Google. He pulled up a blank Google Doc, stared at it meaningfully for 10 minutes, then said, "You wouldn't understand. It's mostly about scalable microservices." Right? Things only got weirder. I noticed he started staging fake Zoom calls. I'd hear him pacing the living room with his laptop open, saying things like, "We need to realign post-sprint. Otherwise the roadmap's gonna collapse. I'm not pushing another commit until DevOps sorts out the containerization layer. Circle back on that. I need to take this call from Berlin." One day I looked closer at his screen. Zoom wasn't open. He was talking to his own reflection in Google Meet preview mode. Another day I asked, "So what's the company called again?" He blinked. Synthwave Tech. I Googled it. Didn't exist. Next day, he had made a website. Minimalist landing page. Buzzwords. A fake team photo he clearly generated using AI. One of the team members' names? ChatGPT. He even made a LinkedIn profile for his fake CEO. Bio. Disrupting disruption with bleeding-edge thought paradigms. Profile picture. Stock photo of a man with 2 watches. At this point, I couldn't tell if he was insane or a genius. But then came the plot twist. One afternoon, we got a letter. Actual physical mail. Addressed to Zachary Miller, Synthwave Technologies. Inside, a formal invitation to pitch at a tech incubator event in Austin. Apparently, someone had found the fake site, loved the mission, and added him to a pre-seed showcase. They were expecting a presentation. In person. I thought he'd panic. Instead, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "We ride at dawn." He flew to Austin with a pitch deck about a company that did not exist. I thought it was a suicide mission. But somehow he charmed the pants off the investors. Spoke in pure Silicon Valley gibberish. Tossed in AI, crypto, decentralized mindfulness, and something he called quantum empathy. He came home with a suitcase and a non-binding letter of intent for $40,000 in seed capital. My unemployed, McFlurry-eating, imaginary CEO roommate landed a potential investment for a company he made up to avoid admitting he didn't have a job. He doesn't even own a laptop with code on it. But now he's the founder of Synthwave Tech. And I'm still paying full rent while he ramps up operations. Sometimes I think, maybe I work for him now.